Set in 1990s New York and inspired by true events, Plainclothes is about a working class undercover officer who is tasked with entrapping and apprehending gay men, only to find himself drawn to one of his targets. The film is directed by Carmen Emmi and stars Russell Tovey and Tom Blyth. All right, Matthew, what'd you think of Plainclothes?
So Plainclothes marks Carmen Emmi's directorial debut, and I'll say right off the bat that I think it was a pretty successful one in my opinion. As mentioned in the intro, this film follows Lucas, a cop that's working undercover in a local mall. He's tasked with entrapping these gay and bisexual men, and during his rounds, he realizes he has this interest in this man named Andrew, and this interest really jumpstarts his own journey into sexual awakening. So this film is really a story of self-discovery and the anxiety that comes along with that in this time when being gay is kind of like in this purgatory of acceptance. It's not quite, being accepted fully in society, but there's progress being made. But the tension and the weight of all the secrecy is really the main focus of the film, and it's so palpable throughout this tension. So this film is really exuding this growing sense of understanding and desire that one has, but during that, you also get this building sense of pain from the fear of those closest to you finding out and what they might think. In the end, I just thought this was a film that was very successful in capturing all these feelings through the views of these two main leads, who I thought shared some really great chemistry on screen and through the visual flares that I think aided in the film's themes and vibes. These are things that I'll get a little bit deeper into in a bit, but there's not many films that I can say I've seen that made me recall so acutely this dizzying sense of wonder, tension, anxiety, excitement, and fear that I experienced myself coming to terms with my own sexuality.
Yeah, I thought Plainclothes was really impressive. This is our third year participating in Sundance in some capacity. So we're coming off our review of Omaha, which I thought was really spare and like not in the best way. But sometimes like Sundance, especially with it being so hit or miss, sometimes you get the very best of independent filmmaking at Sundance. And I think that a lot of that is shown in Plainclothes. On one level, this movie really takes on a lot. It's a family drama. It's a low-key kind of police thriller. It's a film about grief. It's a film about gay love and self-acceptance and about coming out and identity. Maybe it's how effectively the film is executed overall, but I think Sundance films or independent films in general like have this tendency to either be too spare or take on way, way, way too much. And as this film was progressing, I was starting to get concerned that it was taking on too much because of all of these ideas that it's juggling. But somehow, and I think this is mainly due to its execution, it's able to keep all of these things in balance and almost like suffuse them in a way that I thought was just really effective and mostly terrific. It's like a 95-minute film. And there's not like a massive amount that happens, but I think for the scope of the film, it was really effective.
Yeah, I think the film is very aware of this thesis that it has. It is building the tension and racking the tension of the secret. I think as anybody who's in the LGBTQ plus community can understand, there is this something that you're hiding, and there's this tension that's being built over it, and all these emotions are compounding on each other as you come through this realization and you become more secure in this understanding of yourself. What you have, is really just that experience and what that's like until you have this release at the end of the film, which I'm not going to say anything about, but there's, anybody in the community would understand that there's a release once you finally let it all out. So the film is really just that process, I think, on display, but it's just how it visually displays that process, which I think is really well done here. On that note, I want to talk a little bit about the cinematography in the film because it is certainly a bit experimental in some ways, I would say. For example, it employs this technique using a Sony Hi8 camcorder to act as the eyes of our main character at times. This choice instantly made me feel and understand the specific time period in which the film takes place. As someone who grew up during this time period and had a Sony Handycam of my own, it really resonated with me, just this feeling. It was so nostalgic and reminiscent of this time period that it's really hard to put to words. It's more just like a feeling, but I thought the film just gave me that feeling perfectly. But on top of that, I really like how this stylistic choice aids in the film's visual representation of anxiety, tension, and more. The Handycam also results in all this off-kilter footage that's not always in focus. The framing is kind of messed up at times, but that really reflects on the unsteady and uncertain nature of this person and what they're going through. But it also, I would say, contributes to the positive qualities of the film as well. These slow zooms looking into the eyes of another lustful person, the digital artifacts in the footage, and invoking these memories that are attached to these influential moments in somebody's life. So I really loved how the cinematography in this film and the particular use of the handycam footage really played into the movie.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's echoed through the editing. So the editing is fairly innovative in and of itself too. So we have this grainy camcorder footage that you're talking about, right? So that gives the impression of a home movie, and sometimes that's within the text, as you were talking about. Sometimes it's used as a POV shot. Other times the police officers are filming suspects, so that's some of it too. There are also clips of home movies that are cut in. Other times the film is using it as like this impressionistic technique that's not always POV. For instance, I'll talk about the light bulbs in a little bit, but sometimes the light bulbs turn red when he's feeling a certain way. So it's like, it may be POV, but it's like a sense of his feeling more than it is something that's actually taking place in reality. It's like impressionism. So as the film is interweaving these states, like where timeline shifts and psychological portrayals, the film is very good at using visual language to convey a variety of things to you, whether that be different timelines, whether that be how someone is feeling. I hate to keep comparing this to Omaha, but like we get so much about Lucas's character from just that tiny little home movie of just like, I love you, daddy. Like, I know that this is credited to the directing too, but the way that the film is edited and shot and the way that it's woven together just is able to convey so much information to you in such a short amount of time. Another thing too during the editing is it will cut to things from the past and from the future. So it will show like Gus's letter. This is a big part of the film when you see it. But it will show it in the past and then cut to it in the future. It finds these connective points that doesn't make the film feel like it's juggling all of these huge things at once, because it's actually able to kind of fuse them all together, as I was talking about more in my intro.
Yeah, I agree. It did take me a moment to realize we were jumping timelines, or it was the same
very
timeline.
helpful mustache.
Yes.
Yeah, the mustache was very helpful. And knowing that at least it was a different time. I just didn't know if it was past or future at first.
But he looked a little bit too different that I wasn't sure if it was the same people. I was like, oh, is this a scene with different people entirely?
This is like great low budget filmmaking that you give someone a mustache or they have like longer hair or whatever, and we're able to figure it out.
Yeah. Because it's really not the so distant future.
Yeah, it's maybe like a year or something.
Yeah, it's really close. So on all these notes, I want to talk about Tom Blyth and Russell Tovey because they are the main people of the film. Russell Tovey, I'm very familiar with as I've seen a lot of his work. I love him as an actor. Tom Blyth, this is my introduction to him as an actor, I think. I don't think I've seen him in anything else.
Oh, I did see him in something else. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, yes, he's very good.
But Russell Tovey, I was surprised because when he first spoke, I didn't realize he had picked up an American accent for this. He sounded so differently than how he sounds in interviews.
He's in Benediction. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, remember that great film from Terrence Davies?
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do have some familiarity, I guess. But I thought they were just fantastic in the film. I thought they had great chemistry. They play such different characters. Russell Tovey is so much sure he has rules for how he hooks up with guys. He constantly says in the movie multiple times that he only does things twice. And that's for a reason, because he has a family. And Tom Blyth is really just very new to all of this. He's becoming infatuated in a certain way. So he has to learn kind of for the first time how this all works.
Yeah, and this is actually somewhat of a real thing from experience, that men that do this on the side are like very often hesitant to get involved with people who are just coming out because they have an established routine and they have a way of doing things that is like a process, right? And that person they view as unstable. Their emotions are very unwieldy. They haven't been able to kind of like get them in line. There's a great conversation towards the end of the film where he talks about how you grieve a person less and less each time you're with them, that I found like very, very insightful. But anyhow, thought their whole relationship made a lot of sense to me. And I think the characters are very, very well drawn for actually how little they're in the film. Russell Tovey's character.
Yeah, there was more in that little line. There was like a whole little monologue there, but that was so emotionally affecting.
Yeah, so Tom Blyth is really remarkable in this film. He's able to navigate like a variety of different tensions. So the film is, again, it's a thriller, so it's really intense sometimes, and he's very intense as an actor sometimes. There's also a lot of intimacy in the film, and he's able to have these intimate scenes that are like far more loving and sweet, and you just wouldn't expect that from the initial performance.
There's like a harder exterior to him.
Yeah, and he's able to do a lot within a really short amount of time, which I think is great. He's really remarkable here. I want to talk about some of the some of the motifs in the film. So there's two motifs in particular I want to talk about, which is number one is the light bulbs. So there's this running thing of light bulbs. And I can't totally remember when it first shows up, but it seems like whenever Lucas is very overwhelmed, he looks up at a light bulb, and that will trigger a flashback. A lot of times it will trigger them going from regular, I don't know how to talk about it, but like regular filmmaking to the camcorder filmmaking where it's a lot grainier and looks like a home movie. And then sometimes that light bulb will turn red. I don't know if it happens only once or if it happens twice, but I know it happens in the basement towards the end of the film. And that brings him to a flashback of Russell Tovey's character's taillights and him backing up from one of their encounters. And I thought that was really effective in a variety of ways because it not only is it able to trigger a flashback for us, the audience, and give us more information, but it's also able to show the state of mind because red is... It's like this
emergency.
It's a color of passion, emergency, of high tension. It does so much with so little. So I thought that was really terrific. There's also this little thing I told you that this movie was making me crave lentil soup. I love lentil soup. There's a
the weirdest thing to get from this movie, I think, is the craving.
A little bit, I guess. But the film is also in a subdued fashion about grief because I don't think it's a spoiler to say this because it happens fairly early on. The father passes away within this film.
Yeah.
And
we never get to see him. So
we never get to see him, and the majority of the film is like the father has already passed. But one of the things he liked to do on New Year's Eve was to make his lentil soup and serve it sometime around midnight. It seemed like nobody really liked this lentil soup, but they do it for tradition, so it's kind of sweet. But anyway, there's a lot of like fawning over the lentil soup that I just thought was really sweet and intelligent, just as this symbol of grief and this idea that we pass down these traditions that we almost think are kind of stupid, but we just do them because they mean a lot to us. I thought that was a cool little addition to the script.
And what's interesting is that passing down of tradition kind of mirrors what's happening in the scene of passing down of perspectives on being gay, because he's having this thing with his uncle that's going on at the same time. So I don't know, there's layers to these scenes toward the end that I really enjoyed. So it was nice that you mentioned that.
I'm not going to spoil what happens, but I thought the ending of this film was perfect.
Yes.
As you said earlier, it has a release of tension, and then it gives you some indication of how things are going to go, and then the movie just ends. And I thought it was perfect. The movie is this high wire act, and it is so intense for a lot of it, and then it just gives you a second at the very end of it to breathe, and you say, okay. And then the movie ends. It was perfect.
So you ready to go to grades?
Yes, I'm going to give Plainclothes a B+. I thought this was a really, really good film. I was talking earlier about Sundance can be kind of hit or miss. So a lot of times we rent a bunch of movies from Sundance online every year, and like one or two of them ends up being good. And after we had rented Omaha, we were a little like, oh gosh, do we still do Sundance? And then I watched this and I was like, okay, this is what this festival is about to me. So anyway, I think this is still seeking distribution, but I really hope it gets picked up. I hope it gets seen. I definitely think that people will enjoy this movie.
I completely agree. I give it a little bit of a higher grade with an A-, but that's because I think I'm attached to, like, emotionally, I have this emotional attachment, I think, to the film and connection with it. I just like remember growing up and hearing a lot of these comments, such as these ones that Lucas's uncle says in the film, these disparaging words about being gay made right to your face by those who claim to love you without actually knowing all of you.
Damn, bro.
But also the anxiety and guilt we were all made to feel by a society that's not very accepting. The infatuation of a first love that inevitably crashes because no one could really escape reality. And the release of letting it all out, no longer allowing yourself to hold it all in. It really had all these things for me, and that's why I loved it so much.
Just as like a final point, that I don't do this a lot when a movie ends and I kind of sit up and I said to you, I was like, yo, that was good. And I did that with this movie. And I think it's just because it's so much build up and such like a perfect release at the end that the only thing you could say was like, yo, wow, you know? So it was great. Yeah, I really like this movie. So that's it for our review of Plainclothes, which just premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. So if you are able to check it out, please let us know what you thought of it. Otherwise, it is seeking distribution and we hope you all can see it soon. Let us know if you're looking forward to it, and we will see you next time.